It is 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's February 8th. This is the Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and we will begin with the roll call.
Bowman.
Andrew Lewis.
Beck.
Jordan Sellergren.
Nicole Villanueva.
Frank Wagner.
Christina Willou Reynolds.
All right, starting with the public discussion of anything that is not on the agenda. All right, moving on to item D, public hearing, discussing the landmark designation for 302 to 316 East Bloomington Street, the Slezak Holub Skarta building.
You want to go ahead and tell me how?
I will go ahead and explain the order. So we'll begin with a presentation by Jessica. And then following the presentation, if the commission has any questions for Jessica specifically, they can go ahead with those. And then the building owner, Gary Skarta, is here and he'll speak. Following that, the public is able to speak. We're going to try and keep things a little bit brief. Please come up and sign in, say what you have to say, but I'll do my best to moderate so it doesn't go on until 10:30 tonight. And I think with that, is there anything else?
And then we just want to make sure that the commission holds their conversation until after you make a motion and discuss, so we don't just listen to the public.
Great. And Noah Stark is here. Noah Stork.
Okay, and for the record, I'll make a couple notes. The report that was included in the agenda packet had a map that we had actually had the consultant switch out. The map she originally included is the one that's printed, and it's the local North Side Historic District. But since the whole report is from the perspective of the National Register, we had asked her to switch it out with the Gilbert Lynn Street Historic District that's listed in the National Register. And she also mentions the district once in the text. And when she pointed out that we had printed the wrong one, we are switching it out for all subsequent publishing of this. So your agenda packet that goes on to Planning and Zoning and City Council will have the correct map and the correct mention in it, just so you're aware of that. And I also want to point out that we have numerous emails that came in about this, and we have emailed them to the commission, and we have printed them for the meeting here, and there are a few copies back on the podium back there. Otherwise, anything that came in after noon, we will just move on to the planning and zoning meetings. So they might not be included in this packet. I think we've gotten 3 or 4 since then. So
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's see here. Okay, so this public hearing is about 302 to 316 East Bloomington Street, the Slezak Holub Skarta building. And this is a map that just shows all of the historic districts and conservation districts in Iowa City, as well as the local landmarks. And here is the location of that building. So it's right in that North Marketplace, the north part of kind of downtown of Iowa City. This is probably the most common image, and I'm going to talk just very briefly about the building here. This presentation will be very brief. We're not going to cover the whole history. It is all in the staff report. So we basically have a series of buildings that were begun in about 1875 and built by about 1880. They include the large Slezak Hall. It had a dance hall on the upper floor and 2 grocery stores. The uses in this back portion changed over time, sometimes a saloon, sometimes a dining hall. This is an Italianate structure because it has brackets, a wide eave overhang. There's a lot of details in here, as well as the tall windows with the brick hood molds. Let's see. Here's a front shot of it. This is what everybody's familiar with. We think that maybe these tiles were put in a 1930s remodel, but otherwise the changes here for Polly-Ice Pizza were done about 1969, with some of this changing a little bit later as far as how the signboard was up there. I have a photo later. But with the Italianate architecture, we have some nice, tall, arched windows. You'll notice that the top part has been filled in, and this was done when Joseph Holub remodeled this portion of the building and made the hall into apartments about 1930. And so the floor line comes through here, and there's storage above this and apartments in this area. This is just the Lynn Street facade. We can see that this building has had very few changes really since the 30s. This entrance area that might have been to like the saloon and dining hall has been filled in, as well as this window. This is the apartment entrance. We see behind a 3-story Italianate structure. It has much more elaborate hood molds and an elaborate cornice here that includes not only the brackets, but triglyphs and metopes, which are something that we don't always see in some of the local Italianate architecture. As you can see, there's a really low slope gable roof, and there is also the same on the front structure as well. In the back is a lower 2-story building that was a carriage house and was also a laundry and had sleeping quarters over time, and it was remodeled. It has a very mid-century look to the windows and doors, so it was probably remodeled around that time at least into apartments. And of course, we have the laundromat. And the laundromat and the main hall building both have this really ornate Baroque pediment. We feel that it reflects kind of the Eastern European origins of this family as Czech immigrants. This was a stable and a feed barn at one point in time. It was also a garage and, of course, is a laundromat now. I actually like the back of this building because it shows the fact that we have, a sliding kind of stable door that was here and the upper door to, I don't know, potentially a hay mow or something like we would see with a stable or a barn. Okay, so I will go through some of the information that we have here. I think it's best actually to talk about kind of how this started. So the commission has long considered this building to be a potential local landmark. In 1996, when they designated the first landmarks, they were already thinking about what the next group of landmarks would be, and this building was on that list. Nothing really happened with that list over time, and in 2015, the commission kind of reviewed potential landmarks in Iowa City again, with this building being prominently on that list. As those commissioners will say, we did not proceed with landmarks at that time because of a whole council changeover that happened, and so that was tabled again. So, of course, after years of being owned by the same family, at the time when the building went up for sale, there were former commissioners, former staff member, and members of the public who addressed the commission to proceed with a local landmark designation. And so that's where we are right here, right now. And so the commission is charged with determining whether or not the property meets conditions for eligibility. And I'm going to go forward to that right now. So in order to be a local landmark in Iowa City, a property must be significant. It just must be significant to the community architecturally or through its use. It must then also have integrity, and integrity always means that its original, or maybe better said, historic materials are still intact. Everything's not replaced. Once it's replaced and it's a modern material, that integrity is lost. In addition to that, kind of aligning with National Register criteria, it must meet one of these other 4 criteria. One is that it's associated with events that are important to our history. It could be associated with a significant person in our past, and it could also be significant because of a specific architectural style or a specific architect, or potentially it was engineered or something like that. And then finally, it could be significant because of archaeology and what it tells us about our history and prehistory. So once the commission determined that they would proceed with local landmark designation, Friends of Historic Preservation hired a historian, Jennifer Price, to write the report, and she determined that the property is eligible both for in that category of events and for its architecture. So, let's see. I was going to read some of that maybe. So the site inventory, or the form, summarizes the cultural importance of the building to the Iowa City community because it is associated with both the ethnic and commercial history of Iowa City's North Side neighborhood. She continues that the complex of brick Italianate-style commercial buildings at the corner of East Bloomington and North Lynn Streets was a one-stop shopping, dining, lodging, entertainment, and cultural center for the ever-growing Bohemian American community in Iowa City and northern Johnson County. The National Hall on the second floor was home to Iowa City's many Bohemian, fraternal, and community organizations that used the hall for their meetings and housed a comprehensive cultural library. Even by 1900, the building was considered one of the landmarks of the city. That's a quick summary of what she details in the report of a very complex history, all owned by one family. For instance, Joseph Slezak ran it for 25 years and then passed it on to his son, Joseph Holub. Joseph remodeled it again. The National Hall wasn't being used, so it became apartments. And he was running the boarding house in the back, the 3-story building, as a hotel by 1920. The former stable garage became the laundromat in 1958, and Polly I's, originally called Pizza Palace, moved in 1969. So in addition to being significant as an event, the fact that this was used by the Bohemian immigrants and brought in others throughout the county and all of the uses within the building, it's also significant for its architecture because it is such a pristine example of commercial Italianate architecture. Pretty much one of the last remodels was 55 years ago, when Polly I's came in. So Jordan and I also were very happy to be able to visit the inside of this building. And so we also know that even though the interior is not part of how we evaluate local landmarks, it has enormous integrity on the interior as well. It has been very well cared for over time. And so based on the architecture and the fact that it's significant for events, staff finds that it not only meets that criterion A and B, but also C and E. And these are just a few photos of the history of the building. Here we can see before those top parts of the arches were filled in, that the windows were tall. It had a very kind of typical commercial storefront. You can see that area on the side was open at this time. Here's a 1920s photo, and you can see those windows in even more detail. They're almost like a Gothic arch happens up there, as well as the storefronts. Oops. And then here is a 1969 drawing right after it had been remodeled for Polly I's or Pizza Palace. And you can see at that point in time the awning didn't cover the transom above the storefront. It does now, which is fine. Here's the other picture and the list. And so staff's recommended motion is to move forward with the local landmark based on the fact that it meets criteria A, B, C, and E.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to invite the owner, Gary Scarda, to speak, if he would like to do so.
Yeah, my name is Gary Scarda, and I'm the owner of the Hullup Apartments. I'm the 5th generation, and my daughter, Victoria, is the 6th generation. The reason why I'm here, of course, a little bit about myself, certainly. I grew up in the business, basically. My father, I worked for my father in terms of, all the maintenance that had to be done at the building. And I have no siblings, so it was really upon it for me to come back. I worked for the government, and I have a degree in economics. But I survived a few times, probably because I had a guardian angel over my shoulder, and I was meant to come back to manage the building. Not having any siblings, I was the only one that really was able to do that, because of all the growing up, certainly, and getting apartments ready and cleaning out the furnace. I was a small boy, and I would the furnace that we had, there was a little door, and I would crawl into the door and sweep out the debris and so on. So it was, obviously it's been a big part of my life, and so on. But I should point out to the council that the apartment building is privately owned. It's not owned by the city. It's a private business, and one of the reasons why I had not put the building on the historic registry, because it would reduce the marketability of the building. And I figured that one day, when obviously when I was unable to do the things I used to do, as you can see, I'm a little bit hobbled. I had an amputation and so on. So it's I can't do the things that I once was able to do. And but when I came back, obviously spending time overseas, and I married a Czech lady. She was from the Czech Republic. Married her there, and I couldn't do with what I was doing before, so obviously I brought her back here to Iowa City and basically run the building. And my dad had opportunities to sell the building, certainly early on, but I told him that that I would do it, and that was good enough for him, certainly, for me to then operate the business. I got people now, obviously. I have a maintenance man on the premise, and I have another man who collects the rent and so on. I don't even make a dime off of the building anymore. I'm on my retirement. It's a building that since the pandemic. I had a squatter in one of the apartments. He was a drug addict and almost destroyed that apartment. I had to refurbish that apartment, literally. And so there were, things really changed, obviously, since the pandemic. And then, of course, I became an invalid, basically, and not being able to do the things I once was able to do. But the fact of the matter is, obviously the building is private. It's been in my family, like I say, for 5 generations, and it's privately owned. And I don't think it's fair that the city would tell me, since I had not registered the building myself, because if I was willing to do so, obviously, now I'm going to make an offer to the city. If you like to keep it the way it is, they can buy it from me. And they'll have their landmark here in Iowa City. And it is a landmark, certainly. But it does take a lot of maintenance. Even the university could purchase the building because they have a need for one-bedroom apartments. So certainly those are options. I'd like to see whoever would buy the building to keep it the way it is. But for the city to tell me that I'm unable to develop that area, obviously, and I've talked to a couple developers, and they said it's doable in terms of developing this area. It's half a square block, and certainly that would be an alternative. I would rather have somebody take it over and keep it the way it is, certainly. But it's it's a building. It takes a terrific amount of maintenance. Unfortunately, I'm unable to do what I once was able to do, and and it is certainly a landmark of Iowa City. But but it's still private property, and I should make the ultimate decision in terms of what would happen to the building. So. Any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. But yeah, there's obviously my life was spent certainly growing up at that building, and a lot of memories as well. But it's but it is an old building, and so. And like I say, if the city would like to buy it, that would be perfectly fine with me. They can keep it as a landmark. But, I had not registered the building. I thought about it, when I came back from overseas. But I knew that would reduce the marketability of the building, and I didn't want to do that. And so that's about all.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. I want to personally thank you for being such a wonderful steward. It's truly one of the most beautiful buildings in town, and I think everybody really, having read more about you in the last few months, is quite appreciative of you for what you've done. I will move on to public discussion. I didn't allow the commission to ask questions.
No, you didn't. I also forgot to really talk about what this does actually mean.
Okay.
We should probably go over that.
Let's do that.
So, a local landmark designation is a zoning overlay. And so a property has whatever zoning it has, and a zoning overlay is placed upon that, and that makes it subject to review of exterior changes, not interior changes, to the property by the commission or staff. It also makes it eligible for repair funding through our Historic Preservation Fund. It would also make it eligible for state tax credits for repair work as well. It would prevent the demolition of the building. It would not prevent any changes. It would prevent changes that would not be approved by the commission. And another thing that should be noted is that Jordan had asked the planning staff to come up with development proposal what's possible on the site. And the site is limited because of parking. In fact, right now it's grandfathered in. It doesn't have enough parking for the apartments that it has currently. So adding more building to the lot wouldn't be possible because of lack of parking. If the whole thing was taken down, of course, it could be redeveloped, but I don't believe it could be as large as, say, the building that's a block to the south that's new construction, because there would not be enough room on the site for something like that.
All right. I'm going to invite the commission to ask Jessica directly any questions. If anybody has any questions at all.
Just to clarify, our job today as a commission is to determine, based on the recommendation, if the building meets that criteria and if we agree with that.
Correct, yeah.
Great. All right. We will move on to public comment. If anybody in the public would like to speak, you are welcome to do so. I will try and keep it orderly, but I would say let's start with the first person who stands up, and we'll go from there.
And make sure you sign in, too.
Thanks. Jenny is going to speak first from Friends of Historic Preservation. And I would like to thank Friends for really doing so much outreach over the last few months, and we really appreciate your partnership.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for doing the important work that you do, all the way from doors and porches to things like districts and landmarks. And thank you to Mr. Scarda for the incredible stewardship of this building. We all admire this building so much and for so long because of the work that that his family and in the last many years that he himself has done. And I know how hard that must be to have to recognize that you can't crawl into the furnace anymore, or you can't get up on the ladder and do things like that. That's a very hard thing to do for a building that you have been so devoted to and that deserves such good care. I'd like to venture tonight to say that this building represents more aspects of our local history than any other single building in Iowa City. The criterion I'd like to address is events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, and that broad pattern being one we know: immigration, ethnicity, and assimilation. We are taught that story in school, or should be taught that story in school, and you could substitute any ethnic group that has come to the U.S. And see these steps. In this case, we're talking about the Bohemian immigrants who left Austria and the Habsburg Empire in the 1850s. And by the 1870s, they had put down roots. Many had put down roots between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. And by 1912, Bohemians were 1/5 of Iowa City population. The other two larger ethnic groups being Irish and German. A major part of that broad pattern is ethnic identity. And Joseph Slezik's hotel quickly became, quote, the recognized headquarters for his nationality. Bohemian social and aid societies met there in the upstairs hall. These kind of societies were a national phenomenon. They were meant to aid and assist immigrants coming and to face, as our Iowa City favorite Bohemian Bohumil Shimmick said, the dangers that confronted a stranger in a strange land. So even if you were coming to a place where other people of your ethnic group were already living, there still were so many unknowns, and having a social aid society being there to welcome you and help you was very helpful. It could teach you about the new customs and the new laws and offer aid during illnesses and death, and certainly celebrate your ethnic roots. One example of that kind of celebration is when in the social hall there was a play and a dance held benefiting the Herzegovinian rebels, a Serbian uprising against the Ottoman Empire. So already it's very clear that this is a a part of the Bohemian culture and history, and they're proud of it. Another part of that broad pattern is language. It's a huge part of ethnic culture and everyday life, and persisted in Iowa City for a long time. As you know, east of Slezak Hotel was Goostown, a Bohemian enclave that Goostown historian Maribeth Sloniger calls, quote, a neighborhood of close ties held together by their native language. She writes that it took about 3 generations to lose the Bohemian language. By 1880s, Iowa City had 4 newspapers. One of these was Bohemian. It gives you a sense of how important that language was to the identity of Bohemian immigrants. Even into the 20th century, Bohemian language resonated. When Joseph Slezak's hotel or grave marker was put up in 1912 in Old St. Joseph's Catholic Cemetery, the carving is all done in Bohemian. The top of the sign outside the Bloomington building still said into 1912, Narodny Syn, which translates National Hall. And affection for the language persisted for decades, especially the phrase Narodny Syn. I apologize, I don't know Bohemian. When Irving Weber, our favorite Iowa City historian, wrote in 1981 about the building, readers contacted him because he had misspelled Narodny Syn. So this identity with this custom and language persists, and it's no wonder. I mean, when you read this history, you see the same surnames as you see it in Iowa City today, dozens and dozens. Another part of this broad pattern is becoming part of the social fabric. We know the social hall upstairs was used for entertainment, for music. In 1878, the city directory called it a place to trip the light fantastic toe. There was stage, scenery, lights, certainly chairs, occasionally decorations. Firemen's balls were held in the social hall. This was the era of community bands, or actually laws allowing towns to have community bands. And the Union Band in Iowa City, all 8 members were Bohemian. Well into the 20th century, the Jolly Club met there, comprised of, quote, German and Bohemian families, having weekly dances, costume parties, private parties. So even though there are changes coming, they're still hanging on to this identity, and that is a characteristic of the patterns of immigration. Another part is becoming part of the local commerce. We need to remember that Iowa City was a market town, and drew farmers from outlying villages. Mr. Slezak knew what Bohemian farmers needed if they were coming from Swisher or Shoeyville. They probably needed a place to stay overnight, a place to park their buggies and their horses, a place to do their shopping. There was a reason he called it a farmer's hotel and advertised it early as the popular farmer's stopping place. You could buy foodstuffs there, certainly, but also crockery, tin, machine oil, nails. Grocery stores held far more than what we think of today, and so it was a place to stock up on what you needed. His son-in-law, Joseph Holub, followed this pattern to commercial success. 1901, when he became the proprietor, he'd already gone to business college in Burlington, I think. He'd become a local clerk at a store that apparently had made lots of friends, according to the paper, and then became the proprietor of, quote, the National Hall, the Farmer's Home, the grocery store, and all the other business ventures entered in the Slezak Hall. Holub had, quote, a fine outlook for prosperity and fortune. So this happy trajectory of the immigrant coming, making a stake, and making great success we see in this story. And then the final part of immigration is often, not always, assimilation and transition. And in this building, the history of the building, we see that in even simple things like the residential transitions. It's no longer hotel rooms. Now it's apartments for university students, now meaning when it became no longer was a hotel, and when for workers who wanted to walk to their jobs downtown because perhaps they didn't own a car then. It's a transition in transportation. The livery stables became a garage, a very common change from places that serviced needs of the horse rider. Oh dear, that's not what I mean. Like many blacksmith shops turned into car mechanics shops. So seeing this livery stable become a heated garage is also another typical trait. The social transitions in the building are fun to watch. So we're no longer having sort of local ethnic events, but we're having in 1925 basketball and dance between Williamsburg and the National Guard at the hall. In 1930s, we see the great hallmarks of American mainstream society, that being a self-service grocery store that sold Jell-O. In 1950s, we see a coin-operated laundromat. And by the 1960s, we see the motherlode of American culture, mainstream culture, a pizza place that also sold T-shirts. So the uses of Slezak Holub's Skarta building were not unique in Iowa City. In 1879, there were at least 11 other hotels. There were dozens of saloons, dozens of grocery stores, other social halls, even other ethnic social halls. There were other livery stables, other commercial successes. But what's unique in that this building served all of these purposes. This one building followed the broad sweep of immigration and ethnic history in the U.S. It's invisible to us today when we walk along the brick street on Lynn Street side or pull up for a pizza. But this building holds so much stories and so much meaning of this major part of American history and of local Iowa City history. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was fascinating. Is there anybody else who would like to step up and make a comment? Please. And please sign in and state your name if you could.
My name is Bob Wise, and again, I thank the commission for this time, and I thank Jessica for the post that she did do, which kind of woke me up to investigate the property and to come at this point. And I certainly respect Gary's position in where he's at and what it's taken in his life. Very briefly, or trying to, I was born in Iowa City in 1950, and I stayed here until 1972 when I moved to Minnesota and moved back in 2008. I watched a lot of changes downtown. I watched us lose a lot of buildings. I went to school here. I went to high school here. I don't know how many people on the council or in the commission were around in 1965 when this building was built and when we, as I will call, destroyed the town hall and the original fire station, which sat on Washington and Lynn. But in looking at this property, and certainly with everything that the previous lady mentioned, I did not know that Iowa City, as I knew growing up, Washington and College and Iowa Avenue, that wasn't the original plot. The original plot sits the north end being where this building is at. Although if you look at it on the map, it didn't really come into that area until the Lynn Dubuque corridor was added. So if you take the architecture of that building, if you take the area that's around, and if you look at what's now vacant, the parking lot between George's and the Bluebird Cafe, the large structure which has been built and proportionately to me at the Pearson's Drugstore corner when I was growing up, I mean, it really kind of looks like a sore thumb. So historically, if we can keep some of those buildings landmarked as historical buildings connected to not only the culture of the area, but the history of the area, that's something that I think that we have to consider. If we lose this building, we can put up a plaque. I've seen it done throughout Minnesota towns where I lived when I left. But then we'll have the Union Brewery, we'll have John's Grocery, and in all possibility with the university having purchased Mercy, that may get expanded and take over a larger area. And what was known as the original city plot will be lost to commercialization. The history will be forgotten. The nationality will go away. So anyway, you have a hard decision to make. I hope it will be to consider this as a landmark property, historical value to the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Phil Beck, and I have lived in Iowa City since 1975. I want to thank the Commission for bringing this proposal up for consideration. I am in great support of the idea of giving this property, Schleswig Hall, local historic landmark status. It is a beautiful building. And it's already been a landmark, I believe, on the north side, in the north side neighborhood for a century and a half almost. It anchors that whole neighborhood on its northern side, and to tear it down, I believe, would diminish the beauty and historic character of the entire block. Its architectural style, I think, very well matches the strip of buildings on Lynn Street, the east side of Lynn Street in particular. And in addition, its past use as a gathering place for the Bohemian and Czech community in Iowa City makes it a very important monument to the diverse ethnic history of our city. And as someone with Czech heritage in his own family, that is very meaningful to me. And finally, the fact that for the past 60-some years, it's housed one of Iowa City's most popular and iconic restaurants, Palliai's, ensures that this building, Schleswig Hall, is important not simply for its age or its architectural character, but because it continues to serve as a vital part of the business and cultural life of Iowa City. I think it must be preserved, and I enthusiastically support designating it a local historic landmark. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, did you state your name at the beginning of? Yes, okay, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you. My name's Susan Futrell, and I live in the North Side neighborhood here in Iowa City, and I didn't manage to get this down on paper in time to send it to you, so I just wanted to add a couple comments. I don't really have anything to add to the report from Jessica Bristow and the recommendation from the Friends of Historic Preservation, which I'm also a member of. The arguments on behalf of this property on a historical basis and your charge of stewarding those resources seems pretty unassailable. The case is really clear. I just wanted to add some perspective about how I have been thinking about this building in terms of the future rather than the past. a couple of other people have spoken in reference to the fact that having a building with this beautiful architecture and the scale, as well as the history, is part of what makes all of the surrounding parts of our town desirable and valuable and have character. And I think the city always has a tough job to balance the places where development, in the sense of tearing something down and putting something new, is appropriate. But there's another path to building economic value in a piece of property and developing it in a creative way that doesn't have to mean tearing down what was there before. And I think you can point to lots of places in Iowa City and other towns like the Englert Theater and the Brewery Building, the James Theater, where some creative thinking about how to develop that property for the future could really add value to all of the residential and business properties in the surrounding area, including the downtown, and I think really do justice to the stewardship of the Scarta family and how beautifully you've taken care of that building. It would be an opportunity to leave that legacy for future use, and I just want to encourage some future thinking as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm Nancy Carlson. I live on Jefferson Street. I came here in 1965 to go to school and never left. The people who built this building and helped build our city are gone. But this building is an acknowledgement of their existence and their contribution to our city. By preserving this building, we are acknowledging and honoring their contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Curtis, and I'd like to thank the commission for your service. I know that I thought I'd come down here and just say this building should be saved. I've been in and out of Iowa City for 80 years, and my wife and I just moved back to Iowa City from San Diego, and people say, well, gee, why would you ever want to leave San Diego? You know, it's paradise out there, especially when we got 18 inches of snow recently. But anyway, there's a charm in Iowa City, and my wife and I, when we decided to move back to Iowa, we said, where do we want to move back to? And we said, well, you know, Iowa City, we've got roots here. I was born here, and I've been in and out of Iowa City for 80 years. I love this community. But what I've seen is, you know, it's a creeping ugliness of buildings being torn down, and the thing that got me upset is the development aspect. This gentleman, I thought I'd just say, hey, look, you know, save this building. It's a wonderful building architecturally. But after hearing this gentleman, and I really admire his stewardship of this building, and you all have a real difficult decision to make, but you know, I've seen it. And once the building is gone, I think developers, they have a bad name. They're looking at, you know, how much money they can make from a property. I just hope there's some resolution that this gentleman can, you know, be awarded the financial settlement that he deserves, and I want to thank him again for all his efforts over the years. Taking care of old buildings
is not easy. I've done it myself, so. And again, thank you for your efforts in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Sloniger. I can't say very much more than the wonderful things that have already been said by Gina Lee and Jessica and everybody else. But every time I go by this building, I have to recall the 1990s when I started interviewing elders from the Goosetown community that eventually led into a book that I wrote called Small But Ours. But I interviewed, well, among others, I interviewed Marge Hayek, and we had some wonderful visits together. And one of the things that she just brought up was her remembrance of all the wonderful evenings, the dances, and social events that took part in this building. And she even brought out her collection of, I'm not quite sure what you call them, dance programs, little things that were collected at dances. And she was, just delightfully reminiscent about the evenings in this building. And so I always think of her and these people that were part of that community, how much they enjoyed it. And I have to also, it wasn't in the notes, but mark that at one time, the Hullabs were offering meals for 25 cents in this building, and the 25 cents, the meals would have been, I'm sure, cooked by Bohemian women that were known to be good cooks, but also you got a beer with the meal. So we've lost that opportunity, but I hope we can save the building, this beautiful, beautiful building. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all the work you've done to document the history of Iowa City. Is there anybody else who would like to step up and say a word?
Hi, Lou Tassinari. I want to offer a slightly different perspective. If you look at that building, I don't see just a historic structure. I see an incredible amount of embodied energy. And I see an icon of adaptive reuse. And to me, that's almost enough. Regardless of what the criteria are and what boxes we have to check, just thinking about that, the way that building over the stretch of time it's been around has served multiple different functions, sort of demonstrates that it can continue to serve multiple different functions and should continue to serve multiple different functions. But I do want to throw out a challenge to the commission that I think with every benefit there's a cost, right? And we heard the current owner say he didn't designate it basically because it was going to reduce the value. I personally don't agree with that. But I do agree that it might do that. And I think it is incumbent upon us, if you all designate something as a landmark, that part of your charge is to help the owner find the right buyer who values what that building is and doesn't just see it as a potential blank slate, but sees it as more than that and is therefore willing to pay the fair and appropriate price for the structure. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. Anybody else? I think I saw some possible movement, but. Great.
I'll be real quick. My name is Lisa Bockenstedt. I have been a resident since I was born. We're Czech heritage. My mother would tell me stories about, things that would go on at that building, and we would visit Pagliai's. And it was just such a great, memorable experience to do that with my family. I feel like we have lost a lot already. I feel like, so originally the plan was to try to keep buildings under a certain limit to not affect the skyline and that sort of thing, but it just feels like lately the builders are just kind of out of control with the vision of what we really originally wanted as a community. This building is so important, and I wish that we would try to take into consideration the historical aspect and just trying to save more of Iowa City rather than just flattening it and building more sterile-looking buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We should actually close the public hearing, too.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I really appreciate everybody who's spoken. Mr. Scarda, I really appreciate everything that you've said and everything you've done. Is it all right if I make a comment or two now, or should I hold off until the end?
So I think that you should make a motion.
Okay.
You guys should discuss amongst yourselves and then vote. If you need to make comments while you're discussing, go ahead. If you want to make a comment afterwards, you can. Just like if we vote in the affirmative and there are next steps, I'll go over those at the end, too.
Great. All right.
Okay, Wagner moves to approve the designation of 302-316 East Bloomington Street, the Slazak Holub Scarda Building as a local historic landmark based on the following criteria for local designation, criteria A, B, C, and E.
Villanueva seconds.
All right, commission discussion.
Well, I will just say I just live a block from this beautiful building, and it is an important landmark already within the Northside community. And, I so appreciate having a community that has opinions about historic preservation, and I appreciate you coming out and sharing those thoughts. Mr. Scarda, thank you for your stewardship. It's a beautiful building. I think we have criteria here. It's very clear that this building fits those criteria, and if we're thinking about that, it makes sense for me to say yes and to have this progress. But I think, like Jessica said, this will have to then go through planning and zoning and city council. So I'm feeling like we have the ability to open the discussion, to continue it, to hopefully, maybe find some arrangement that works for Mr. Scarda and his family. But if we're just thinking about the criteria, it fits, and for our commission, I think it's very clear what we need to do. And I do like this idea of thinking about the future. Particularly with the north side, we are seeing so many changes within the downtown. We're seeing tall buildings. And I think we're beginning to realize, the community's realizing, that tall buildings maybe don't belong everywhere within the city. And there is a quaintness to the north side. I think we're giving a message as a community about how we move forward with that bit of space. Maybe it isn't a space for the modern buildings. And yeah, like Lou said, to think about the adaptability. We can think about keeping these materials from the landfill and thinking about how to repurpose a building so that it makes sense within our time. So those are the things that kind of drive me on this commission, to think forward as well as acknowledging the past. So those are my thoughts.
I'll say something, which is that I was born in Burlington, Iowa, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful cities in the state. It is fairly well preserved, but there is also a lot of a lot of beautiful old buildings that are neglected and falling apart and may never be rebuilt again. I moved to Cedar Rapids when I was in elementary school, which, I witnessed St. Luke's just kind of clear a lot of the neighborhoods that are north of downtown. And then saw the derecho destroy properties, destroy, trees, which, are as precious to us as buildings. A 150-year-old tree, you can't, it takes a while to regrow. And then in Iowa City, I see hungry developers kind of scooping up what they can and opportunistically taking down what they can and putting up spaces that do not have the same, they don't embody the same kind of historic spirit. They don't serve our community in the same way, and they remain empty. And they provide, to some degree, they provide housing, but the spaces on the ground floor are empty. And if they're not empty now, they might be empty in a year and stay that way for a year. I work at Little Village, and the building that went up across the street from us in the spaces where the Civil War era cottages were, the ground floor level has never been inhabited, and I think that went up in 2018. So I joined the commission because I want to do one thing, and that is to prevent developers from removing our history. And that is, I think that's very important. I think that designating this space as a landmark will not reduce its value. I think it increases its value, and I think it increases the value of our town and our community. And I just also want to say that I appreciate everybody who came out tonight. And that's all I'd like to say for now. So, would anybody else on the commission like to make a comment at all? All right. In that case, we will vote on the motion. Do we need to repeat it, or will we just cast a vote? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great.
And so the next thing that will happen is that the local landmark proposal will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I don't personally know what meeting that will go to, so everyone who is interested will have to let them know. Once it goes to Planning and Zoning, whether they approve it or not, it will go on to City Council. And City Council will take the recommendation of both the Planning and Zoning and the Historic Preservation Commission into consideration. And it'll go through 3 readings, and there will be also opportunity for public comment at that point in time, too.
Great.
I encourage you all to go to those meetings, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just as we move forward, like I said, protecting buildings from being, the only way we can protect them for sure is by protecting them, by designating them. And so I do hope that people continue to show up in the future. This is the fullest room I've seen since I started on the commission in August 2019, and I really, really appreciate it. And, we would really like to keep going and keep this town intact as much as we possibly can and fight off the developers. So thanks, everybody. All right, we are going to move on to item E, Certificate of Appropriateness for 709 Oakland Avenue in the Longfellow Historic District. Thank you, everybody.
Y'all just pause for a second.
All right. I think I covered everything.
I just don't think there's any point.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
All right.
709 Oakland Avenue is in the Longfellow Historic District, located on the corner here of Seymour and Oakland Avenue. It is this little cottage that we think might be a catalog home. It's a little side gabled, it's a clipped gable, or a jerkin head is what it's called. It has this slight eyebrow kind of entry canopy. And the project is to remove this existing stoop and step and to replace it with a new one. Here's a historic photo, sort of, and it shows that originally this had a masonry, brick, and concrete stoop that was removed by the current owner at some point in time. Here it is from the side. You can see the clipped gable there. Oops. And from the rear, it has had a dormer addition added. There's a little bit of history in this property in the fact that a few years ago, the owner wanted to look into potentially putting a ramp because he is sometimes in a wheelchair and sometimes with a walker. And unfortunately, I don't know why these are cutting off like this. This is a little weird, but the property lines are close enough to the house that he does not actually have property to put a ramp in, partly because the house is really high out of the ground, so it'll be a lot of ramp. In the back, the kitchen steps down to a landing to the door, and then that has steps to go out, so it's not possible to ramp out the back either. Will you guys please close the door? Thank you. So the proposal is to build basically a 7-foot by 10-foot entry stoop. The drawings were submitted, and there were a few things about it. For instance, it talks about the decking being synthetic, wood grain, and paintable. It talks about the new balustrade and handrails also being a synthetic material with wood grain. And so I just want to point those things out. You'll notice that the canopy here has these heavy brackets, and it is proposed to align with the brackets. Staff would also recommend that. There's some complicated guidelines involved with this, and it actually only came to you for a very simple reason. These are the conditions for a staff review of a front stoop and step, and one of them is that the landing will be restricted to approximately 5 feet wide by 5 feet deep. And that is most of the reason why it came to you. Now, staff would have always recommended that it aligned with the brackets if it was replaced with wood. If it was replaced with brick and concrete, it would be configured similar to the original. But with wood, it would align with the brackets. And so that means that it was always going to be about 10 feet, 10 and a half feet wide. They have proposed to actually make it 7 feet deep. You know, the canopy is probably about 3 feet or so, which is typical. We can go with 5 as a staff review. They want 7 because while it won't provide the owner with accessibility to grade because it's not a ramp, it will provide him with an area that he can get to by himself and be outside. There are other things that in the front stoop and step, such as the stoop will be supported on posts and piers that align with the corner posts and the railing. There would be porch skirting because it's on the front for any exposed area underneath. All wood elements are painted. In the balustrades and handrails, it talks about how we do handrails, and in section 4.14 on wood, it talks about how we can substitute materials for wood. And It is disallowed to substitute a material in place of wood that does not retain the appearance, function, and paintability of original wood. It has been our practice to not approve synthetic materials with a fake wood grain, period, because historic wood on a house would be highly finished. It would be smooth, the joints are smooth, so they're not apparent, and so we only approve smooth products. For instance, our cement board that we will approve is not the fake wood grain, but the smooth version. And so the fact that the drawings talked about having a fake wood grain, that is one thing that staff would recommend not approving. They do propose to use a synthetic material for the floor like Trex, and I think that Trex mostly comes with a fake wood grain. However, that is also a horizontal to the ground surface, and so only those who step on it would notice that. And so we have approved Trex type material on some of these locations. And it again talks about, in porches, it talks about leaving the support piers exposed below the columns and adding skirting so that those piers are exposed. And the reason I point that out is only because of the fact that it's hard to see here, but they had drawn the post actually set back about a foot from the corner. And so the staff recommendation is to approve this project at the 10-foot by 7-foot dimension with the following conditions: that any composite material other than the floor has a smooth finish. However, the next condition is the balustrade, skirting, skirt board, and risers are all constructed of wood. So I don't actually think there will be other composite materials except for the floor. And that those outer piers are revised to align with the posts in the balustrade, and then they would be exposed by the skirting. And since we sent this to the applicant, since we published the agenda, they have written back that they do support the recommendation.
Great.
I tried to clarify if they were going to be using any synthetic materials beyond the wood, and they just responded that they will follow the recommendation. And so I believe that the staff would recommend approval.
Lovely. All right. Do I have a motion?
Beck moves to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 709 Oakland Avenue as presented in the application with the following conditions. Any composite material other than the floor has a smooth finish. The balustrade, skirting, skirt board, and risers are constructed of wood, and the outer piers are revised to align with the balustrade posts above and are exposed.
A second?
Wallou
Best
Reynolds seconds the motion.
It's all yours.
All right. Any clarifying questions for Jessica?
I guess our biggest concern is size?
Yeah,
Is that
I
what
mean,
I'm hearing? Okay.
before we made this a staff review, all of these would have come to you guys. But, anytime we don't have a front porch is a specific thing to us. It has a floor, it's tongue and groove, the roof fully covers it, it has columns. Anytime we don't have that, there's the possibility of a step and stoop. Historically, some of the bankers' modern kind of small salt box houses, they might have just had like concrete steps, but now people want something where it has a landing. And sometimes code requires that as well. And so we've developed kind of a practice for a stoop and step that combines just the basic step with a little bit of the porch guidelines because it's on the front. And so, anytime something doesn't actually meet the conditions, we can potentially review it as an intermediate review with the chair, but not when it's in a historic district, only when it's in a conservation district. So then it comes to you.
And I missed the point about the ramp. Will there be a ramp with this?
There
I saw
won't.
a line across the side of the house.
Grading.
Yeah,
It was kind of a slanted, yes.
oh
the
yeah,
upper
that's
right.
just the grade.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the way they drew it. They could have made it so you can't see this as well.
I see.
I only pointed out the ramp because of the fact that we had tried to come up with a ramping solution for this owner at some point in time, but the property lines It would have to be on the right-of-way, and that is not something that, so far, we've been, they can't do a permit for that.
And so the concern with the size is that it comes out further than it would normally come out, but the
Yeah, I
other
mean,
dimension is, well, we're not worried about that.
yeah, a staff would have recommended making it the width of the brackets anyway, and so
And they're already
we would really never review this as a staff thing. Now, we would have recommended probably just the 5-foot depth, but we can see that just adding a simple 2 extra feet does not increase it astronomically, and it will increase the usability for the homeowner.
Right. All right. Let's vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Moving on to item F, discussion of the commission annual work plan. And thank you for writing it up so nicely, Jessica. I think it's beautiful.
Well, I actually didn't work on it for a long time until I was just like, oh, okay,
Well,
fine.
How brilliance works.
No, so I did put the goals up here in case we need to refer to them. Here's the first 5, and these are part of the preservation plan. And they are the goals that are supposed to guide your work. So here they are. So I took out the 3 priorities that I heard about, and we have listed those individually. The first was, even though we know that the planning for Oak Grove Park is a few years out, the commission wanted to kind of get started on working on that type of a project and what it might mean. And I felt by reviewing the preservation plan that it met 3 of the goals of the commission's work. And this would be something where presumably a subcommittee would be involved, and we'd figure out what it means to work forward. The second one was having a landmark district subcommittee, and that not only has to do with finding any potential individual landmarks, such as what we discussed earlier today, but it also might mean working towards whether or not there is ever going to be a local downtown district to protect our downtown buildings. And that meets most of the goals because it is the core work of preservation. And that also would likely be some kind of a subcommittee work. And the way that would probably work is we would figure out who would be on the subcommittee, we would schedule any meeting, figure out how we want to proceed, and we would check in regularly. We might have a little bit of commission discussion at the end of the meeting where that subcommittee reports back. And it might just be some little thing like, we actually met, or whatever it is.
And the subcommittee would not be quorum, so we could meet at a bar, in theory, or something like that, if we wanted to, just
Yes.
to like make it less work, like in the beginning.
Except for if staff is involved.
Okay, gotcha.
It is
Well,
staff time.
I wanted to ask if, I've had trouble just like understanding the basics of just sending an email to commissioners. Do we have a list of everybody's contact information? Can you send that to us, or is that bad?
I do, but
We have to do that.
you have to be
Research
careful
ourselves.
not to have a quorum.
Right,
And
absolutely.
so that's why when we send things to you, I send them all as blind carbon copy so that you can't reply all.
Okay, yeah.
Because as soon as you reply all, we have to put it in the agenda or the minutes or the meeting or
I
whatever.
understand. So maybe like at this meeting, we could gauge interest and see who's interested in participating in what committee, and we'll have to limit them.
Yeah, we could do that. Or, we could do it this meeting or next meeting.
Okay,
we should
maybe next meeting.
see how it goes. The third one was engaging with the public and city council. This I think has more to do with maybe helping you guys get engaged individually and as a commission so that you can know what the other city commissions are doing. And, maybe that's attending meetings when it's important. It might just be that someone decides that they are assigning themselves to check up on the agendas for a certain commission or something like that, and note when they're talking about something that might be of interest. I don't know. So I think this doesn't necessarily mean a committee, but, just how you engage with others. I then took the things that are ongoing and listed them separately. We have our preservation awards.
7 months.
Huh?
The Historic Preservation Awards are in 7 months.
Yeah, and so one thing along the lines with trying to make it less of a staff thing, for instance, there is a house being painted on Burlington Street, just east of Summit. And someone, if they thought, wow, this house might be painted in a historically appropriate way, could take a photo of it in process.
Oh.
Take another photo of it after and send them to me by email with the address. And you right there would be putting a property on the nomination list. So please do that.
Is this something that you can, like, if it can, again, this comes down to like communication and email, like, is this something you could say, hey, there's this place, or do you
No,
need to
I want
stay out
you
of it?
guys all, I mean, my point here is I do not want to have
Don't
to
want
go
to.
search for properties.
Can
or-
you tell us what this
or-
property is
I was
in
about to be like,
question?
Can you give us a house number? Because I feel like this is targeted towards me.
It's the gray one that we approved mini split
Okay.
on the side of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just east of Burlington, through like 3 properties or so.
Yeah, quick question. So for the awards, I don't know, what's the year they count for? You know what I mean? It's like.
It
is
would be for 2023. right?
So basically, yeah, our awards, if we decide to have them in the fall, will be the 2023 awards, because we're awarding things from the previous year. It used to be in January, that's why the
okay.
dates.
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, the awards are always for the year that is done.
Do these also have to be how, like, things that we've approved and we look at the things we've
No.
approved?
No, no.
It's just
They can-
anybody who has worked
Painting
throughout
is
anyway.
not our jurisdiction.
Oh, okay, good point.
Right, so it can be anything in town
Yes.
Oh, like
within
the
the city limits that is a historic property, so 50 years old or older, and has appropriate work done on it. Now, if you don't know if it's appropriate or not, take as many photos
the
as you
pictures
can
anyway.
from the
Start
street.
Stalking everyone.
Yeah, and the award subcommittee can help. They are the ones who pick the winners, and so they can work through those things. So please, when you're driving through your community, if you see things being done or think that something might have changed, make note of it. If you can figure it out that what was done, then email me those things and just put awards nomination, and then provide me with the address, any
So
photos.
we can just rapid fire
anything.
email them to you from
No.
from bed, like if we.
And I will just put them in a folder, I have a place, but please, getting a nominations, that's an important one, and photographing them. And you can take as many photos as you want of any property from public
Sidewalk.
land. So you just don't enter their property.
Sure. And like, what kind of, again, this is the thing that you were basically saying there's a lot to do for this. So if there's a submission to you, how much do you want written up about that? Like, as much as we can do, and then give it to you and say.
Brief
here's-
description, address for now, and then we'll address that later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the writing
it-
happens and the choosing happens later.
Yeah, I mean, if,
So I want to get ahead of that, so it's not like we're like
Yeah.
smashing it all into the thing and
Yeah.
like too much.
But the idea is
but-
that get as much a list as long as we can.
Gotcha, okay.
well, and I frankly don't think, honestly, that you'd give me too much information, because if you just send me some photos and an address, I might not know exactly what's done, but if you look it up and actually figure out that they put an addition right here, then provide that information.
Okay.
So, yeah, anything that can help the committee would help me, because otherwise I have to come up with the information to help the committee,
Keep
you
it
know.
cursory at first, and then we'll dig there.
We have to make a pact.
I know.
This year.
I found a house, and Jessica showed me this trick when I was involved with the awards for last time, you can go back into Google Maps
right?
and bring up a picture of the home before the changes and send that, a snapshot of it to Jessica, along with your own pictures and say, here's what changed.
Yeah. The more information, the better, because that's less that I personally have to do.
Gotcha.
On the other goal, we have the Historic Preservation Fund. It's still popular, and later on, I have a little bit of information about that. And then we have the Summit Street Monument, where, again, with the current budget, we've asked for money to do something with that, and we'll see if we get the budget or not. If we do, it'll move up. And then I listed our old long-term goals, and they're right here.
Can we go back to the landmark thing? Or no, the marker thing?
Holly Eyes building?
No,
The Summit Street.
Yeah.
This one.
Well, I know we were talking about that, but how was that determined that was the best option? Who determined that?
We had a study that was done in the, I can't remember what time, and when we do talk about this, we'll bring it back up, or I can even send it to you if you want. But it was done by a professional stone conservator. He's from Connecticut. It was hard to find the correct professionals for this. But he evaluated the current damage, and, he provided us with multiple options. And overall, it was determined that if the monument stays where it is, it will deteriorate to nothing. And that gets faster each year. It's like exponentially deteriorates because of acid rain. That's the way it works on limestone, because limestone is base and acid, and so they don't work together. But anyway, it will continue to get worse and worse. And so his recommendation was to move it to an interior location, creating a base, because there's a part in the ground, and a display case for it, and then put a replica or a sign or something in its location. And at least when it was discussed with the commission, it was kind of going towards the idea of a replica. The replica would then also have a sign that would point out where the original is.
But nobody wants it.
No, we've been talking about where it would go, and that's an ongoing conversation. If the money, if council provides the funding to do the project, then yeah, we would have to work towards where it would go. And
This
we,
is a concept that's not that new. In Florence, the Statue of David is not the original.
Right, yeah.
Outside.
It's a common thing to remove the precious one so that it's protected, and to put a replica in its place.
Do that with the Poly Eyes building.
Hey!
Put a replica in its place.
Big snow globe.
Anything else?
Dome.
No, I think I
Yeah.
love it. Do we have a motion?
Wagner moved to approve the 2024 Historic Preservation Work Plan.
8 seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great.
Was that you, Margaret?
That was me?
Okay. I thought I heard a muffled sound.
Oh. Sorry.
Now the annual report.
Okay, and I, actually, it's a requirement that we present it to City Council, and so I did that Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
I want to point out a couple things, though. It's an online form, and they've already added a category that they have had in the past, but wasn't in there. I will definitely need to make revisions to the annual report. And so you'll see at the end, the recommendation is to basically allow the final to be kind of approved by Jordan or staff or whatever. And I will give you a copy of the final report. We will also, it's required that the mayor signs it, so he'll also get a copy of the final annual report. So it'll go into the city council, information packet, basically. So it goes through, it's important to note that the annual report comes from the state, and the state's biggest purview is the National Register of Historic Places. And so they ask us about National Register properties. Those are pretty much our historic districts and some of our landmarks. And then they have this area where they ask us about just our local designations, and that's also some of our local landmarks, and then the conservation districts. So they kind of split it up. So they want general information. The commission consists of 12 seats. We had 12 meetings last year. Our budget, it's mostly comes out of our Neighborhood Development Services Department, which is what I'm an employee of. We have $450 for our annual mailing that we send out every spring. We have about $750 for training and other expenses, which I'm sorry, but does tend to end up going to me, for me to go to be trained. And then we have our Historic Preservation Fund, which is is in a different part of the budget, and of course, they had increased it by $2,000 for this year.
Was that a city increase?
What?
Did the city increase?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
So then they ask us about all of the National Register listed properties that were altered. We don't regulate some of the National Register properties like downtown and Melrose and stuff like that. So we don't tend to put them in our report because we don't know as much about them. So we take it from what we've reviewed. And we do not include certificates of no material effect or non-contributing garages, that kind of stuff. So of what we do count, there were 34 properties that were altered during this year, and this is just one example. I mean, I don't think it was actually done yet. Maybe it was, but we approved the addition on the back of 430 South Summit is just one example.
No kidding.
remember doing that at all.
Of the locally designated properties, so those in conservation districts, we had 23 that were not just a certificate of no material effect, and this was the porch reconstruction at 103 South Governor. I had a before, during, and after for council, because the before, I mean, you could tell that it was deteriorated, it was sunk and stuff, and I mean, in my mind, it looked pretty bad, but it actually didn't look too much different because they copied it. And so I included the during so they could see how bad some of the wood was. But the contractor faithfully copied all of the details. Then they ask about any new local designations, and we had one this past year when we locally designated the Emma Goldman Clinic. They ask us about assistance that we provide on preservation projects. A lot of this is staff work. I provide technical and design assistance to anybody who applies, but frankly, I get calls from other communities, and this year I even had calls from other states. And so it kind of depends, people asking all sorts of different questions.
I love the product placement here, Jessica.
Oh, Coke.
Yeah.
That's funny. I took this photo just before as I was walking into work on Tuesday, but yeah, I didn't notice that. So I keep track of how many individual inquiries that we get. So we've had 241 inquiries this calendar year. That's on individual different properties. So we might have had like many more than that if we count the 7 times I get a call on one property or whatever. So I only count each property once. That resulted in 85 applications. And I also work with, others areas of the city and preserving their buildings, such as working with the senior center staff on figuring out how to do this extensive exterior rehabilitation. And there are other things listed in the written version of the report. The other assistance is the Preservation Fund. So as you know, we provide $5,000 matching grants or no interest loans, well, except for this extra $2,000, so that'll be a $2,000 one. And to date, we have funded 54 projects on 43 properties, so numerous doubles. And that's $165,000 worth of mostly grants. I think we've had a few loans. And the total project costs were $404,000. So we've helped with a lot of work. And this just is the Emma J. Harvett house, and so I provided that. It's not this set of stairs, it's the one on the side, but this was the after having a extremely qualified mason work on this house. And then it talks about our public education and outreach, and this year it's mostly been, our awards. I guess I need to add, I do end up doing like daily Iowan interviews every once in a while, and we have done in the past, but not any this year, different videos and podcasts and stuff like that. I did in 2024. Okay, so there was a talk that I gave in February of 2020, like right before the pandemic, for Black History Month at the library. And it was a talk where I went over what we did for our civil rights grant on those two properties, and we didn't record that. And so Channel 4, just in January, had me present it to their camera. It was very unnerving. And they recorded it. And so now, I'm never going to watch it, but it is on YouTube. And I will say it was a very difficult presentation to give like that because of just the wording. I mean, if I had written that presentation thinking about presenting it, I would have changed some of the words. And it's long. It's a good 45 minutes, I think. It took 2 hours to record it because we had to stop because they were working on the parking ramp and it was noisy. It was weird in there. But so we do that kind of thing. So that will be listed next year in our public outreach and education. Issues, challenges, and our successes. The rash of work without a permit has been horrible. It has been not only without a building permit and historic review, but sometimes just without historic review, but most often without both. And, if people just do the work without coming to anybody at the city, it's kind of hard to catch them. But we have done things about our internal processes that you guys just wouldn't, happen to get in contact with, to try to catch anything where they actually go for a building permit, but then don't go for a historic review. So we should at least be able to make that not happen. And that was a lot more rare.
I have a question with regard to education and outreach,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is that when they were doing those Windows classes at PS1, do you remember that? It was like 2022 or 3?
Yeah.
Is there any way we could partner with PS1 on those and somehow and
Yeah, I mean, I
a little
think
bit
that
of that gold?
Since we would have to do a budget ask for city council for us to actually put any money towards anything.
Sure.
So in a way, it's almost better for the commission to partner with Friends of Historic Preservation because they can more easily use cash to set up that kind of thing. And then Friends could partner with PS1, but the commission could take a big role in that.
Yeah.
You could, start it, or something like that. But getting education for contractors in the trades, I think, is a big thing that we need to do because of the shortage of contractors.
For sure.
So beyond that, our open positions on the commission occasionally make it hard to meet quorum. There have been some meetings where I have a little panic until I finally hear that we have a quorum because I'm thinking about having to reschedule with applicants, and it sucks. And if we had more positions filled, it would be better. The lack of available contractors or even drafters for applicants, and it's not like there's none, but there's fewer than we need. One good success is the fact that this barn here that actually used to be owned by the Wagner family is getting a new foundation, and it's needed it for many years. One challenge is the fact that no work has proceeded yet, and I don't want to talk about that right now.
Okay.
partnerships formed or continued. So staff worked with the Housing Fellowship and their architect to come up with the design that was then approved by the commission, and that's a big plus for the community. We had both the Climate Outreach Coordinator and Parks and Rec Director come to the commission to talk about their different things, and of course working with the senior center staff. And I mean, one of my favorite partnerships is with City Channel 4, just because it's kind of fun to do the extra things, and they're very good about recording our awards, and they've made some nice videos for us in the past when we've requested it. So that's a good partnership as well. And so that's all I have right here. I still have numerous things, like I have to fill in all the information about all of you guys. I need a form filled out from Andrew. I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to add to the annual report. I don't think anybody's done any specific training, so I don't think there's that. Anyway, if you go back and look at what is in the staff report and think, wow, wait, didn't we do this? Just email me, but do that in the next week.
Okay.
But otherwise, this would be the motion to be approved by staff and chair, basically. So approved meaning I will finish it, I will show it to her.
And I'll say, great.
And I can't remember if no, I don't need your signature on it. I don't, but anyway.
All right, do we have a motion?
Bowman moves to approve the 2023 CLG Annual Report, allowing for revisions to be approved by staff and chair.
Villanueva seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
We only had one staff, well, it's partly because staff was busy. But part of our, trying to make sure we don't have work without a permit going through, you will see that we will have some pretty simple little mechanical, electrical, plumbing things that come through us because they make a hole in the wall. And they'll just be a certificate of no material effect usually. But we might review some of those odd little things just to make sure we're catching things. And so this one happened to be a new range hood vent that was going to be put in the wall in the back of the house on an addition anyway. Minutes. Wait, is this, Deanna, you gave me a change the minutes? No, that was
That was
to
last
the
time.
Yeah.
annual report.
Yes, your
Okay.
beautiful report. I think they're okay, right?
I thought so too, yeah, I read through.
They were very long.
All right.
Let's see, do we have to approve those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. We need a
I'll-
motion
A
to-
motion to approve.
Wagner moves to approve the minutes for January 11th, 2024.
Bowman seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. J, Commission Information, Preserve Iowa Summit.
Yeah, and I just want to point this out. The annual summit is June 6th through 8th, and it'll be in Mount Pleasant this year, which is not too far away. Again, I don't think that we'll necessarily be able to afford to send commissioners, but if you're interested, let me know and I'll find out. Otherwise, I encourage anyone who can do it on their own to attend. Typically, they have what they call a CLG roundtable at some point during the summit, and that is particularly for you guys. And it's where you can learn from other commissioners in other communities. The state can talk to you directly about things that they want to tell you about. You can ask questions. They might provide educational opportunities, whatever. But this is typically that first day, which is a weekday in the morning. And so that hasn't necessarily worked out for people to come. They usually have the Saturday as a free day. And the Saturday often has workshops and stuff, and they are thinking of potentially moving the CLG roundtable to that Saturday. And so if you happen to be able to have that available now and could maybe bookmark it on your calendar as a potential thing to take a little trip down to Mount Pleasant on June 8th, it would be great to have as many of you there as could attend.
I will tell you now, I'm going to Missouri on that weekend, but I will be driving south, and maybe I could schedule it in for the first day.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, Mount Pleasant.
But it's also the kind of thing where anybody who, I mean, we used to kind of come back to the commission with things we learned from the summit, and we just haven't really kind of had time for that. But
Know where they're holding it there in Mount Pleasant?
I don't know yet. No, I'm not sure. But I mean, they have to have a hotel that everybody's going to stay at and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It is frankly fun. They usually have some social things. I mean, and don't be afraid if you don't know anybody, because you know me. And I will introduce you to anybody that I can remember their name while I'm standing there talking to them.
You could do it like you don't say their name, and
Yeah,
then,
and
I say,
then-
oh, I'm Frank.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We can all agree to that.
No, but it would be fun to have commissioners there, and it I mean, they do provide with some good educational opportunities. So they will put more information out.
If you've never gone, the old Threshers reunion in Mount Pleasant is amazing.
Is it the same
time? No, it's the Labor Day weekend. So it's not just a bunch of old tractors. I mean, it's printing presses, machinery, how they used to build stuff 100 years ago. I mean, and I'm guessing that that's why I asked about the location. Their facilities at the old Threshers are really impressive, and I bet you they might hold it there.
Interesting.
Time to buy property in Mount Pleasant. Ragbai's going through there, too.
Oh, there you
wow.
go.
And I just saw that's a Thursday through a Saturday.
Yeah.
6 through 8.
Yes, it is. Yeah, there are some weekdays, and so that's why I point out that usually the Saturday alone, if you only attend it, is free, and hopefully they will end up moving the round table to that day, and it would be in the morning, so you might have to get up early to drive down there, but yeah, if you can come and stay the whole time, it is a good thing. Before we end the meeting, I just do want to remind everybody that the next meeting was pushed back.
Right.
So it is rescheduled to March 21st.
That's the third Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will be here.
Okay.
And we'll still get an email that says, are you coming?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get
Yeah.
everything like normal. I might publish the agenda. The agenda might not be published until that Monday because I'll be taking the Wednesday and Thursday off the week before, or I'll publish it early if I have the opportunity. We'll just see. I'm not sure.
Do we, and planning and zoning will have looked at.
Yeah, when I find out the dates, I will let you know.
Okay. Cool.
So now,
And I discovered that when something comes from our commission and goes to planning and zoning, they will sometimes say, is there anybody here
We'll be
from
there.
the Historic Preservation Commission that would like to share their thoughts?
Yeah.
I was there one time for something on a different matter. It was for the Emma Goldman House, actually, that they wanted somebody to speak, and I was like, oh.
Technically, yes,
I just
but no.
sat there, and I thought, no one's going to recognize me. They did, and they wondered why I didn't speak about that.
Well, as soon as
So-
we know, I think it would be a good idea to at least loosely plan on being, as many of us as possible being present. We really do want to, it's boots to the ground now.
yes.
And can I ask, is it for the P and Z and the city council, is it the same criteria? Like we had, this criteria, if it meets any of these, then it would be. Is that the
No.
same, or will they listen to?
Not necessarily. So the Planning and Zoning Commission will review it based on the comprehensive plan for the city. And I mean, the comprehensive plan includes a preservation plan, which does call for the preservation of buildings. However, I don't know how that'll be covered because it's a different commission. And so that is something where, it would be for you guys to point out in that meeting if they're not talking about the preservation plan as part of the comprehensive plan. They might talk more about their developmental plans for Iowa City and whether or not that is an area that they consider for redevelopment or not. I'm not sure exactly where that'll go. City Council will likely weigh it on owner rights versus community
Yeah. We're going to
value.
need a lot of public support.
Yeah.
So the city one is more like we go in with
ethical.
kind of what we heard today of like
Yes.
the pleas for why we should be saving.
Yeah, and the reason is because if it, I'm assuming Gary will put in what we call a protest, which is a formal protest that he does not want his property landmarked, and that'll go to the city clerk. And according to our city code, that requires a supermajority of city council to approve the landmark designation.
Not a unanimous.
Not unanimous. It requires 6 out of 7.
I would be interested to, and I don't know how this would happen, but like, just figuring out what the value of the potential development, to see if it even meets the listing price, you know? I don't know how you
cast his net.
And that's what you were trying to get at, right, Jordan, when you contacted?
Yeah, well, that was, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. But that didn't, like, an actual, like a money value, like a.
City council, they have the tough decision. Like, I felt like tonight, we did not have the tough decision.
When people said a tough decision, it's like, no,
Everybody said it was going to be tough. I'm like,
go by criteria,
you know, we're not here for one reason, really, but we're going to really have to push. I mean, it's time.
P&Z also, like, we gave a unanimous yes to approve for, they will also do the same? Do they, at the end of their meeting, do they come up with a vote?
Yeah, they will come up with a vote because it's a rezoning.
Okay.
So they handle it like any other rezoning that they do in town. And so, yeah, they vote. And it's not a matter of if they say no, ours is dead.
Right.
What happens is both of the commission's opinions go on to city council.
And for P&Z, is it, like, for city council, it's 6 out of 7. P&Z, do they all have to agree?
No.
They can dissent, and they
No.
can say 3 out of 4 of us thought this way. How many
Yeah, for all commissions, and generally for city council, if there's no protest, it's only a straight majority.
Straight majority.
Yeah. For instance, we had a commissioner here once who thought that all of the commission's decisions had to be unanimous, and that's not the case. I mean, we could have a vote that came down to 4-3.
And how many people are on P&Z?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I think it's about the same, they kind of fill this whole bank.
Okay, yeah, 7, 8, or
Yeah.
8, maybe, okay.
Anything else?
Odd number, because of
No.
voting.
If not, you can.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, Lou Reynolds seconds the motion.
This is unorthodox.
Someone
moves that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great job, everybody.